Film on Film, a loose ranking of the 10 best movies that peek behind the cinematic curtain. From the inception of motion pictures in 1898, an inherent fascination has existed not just in the images flashing on screen, but also in how they were captured. This interest is not solely confined to the moviegoing masses, or by the alluring glitz and glamour of movie stardom, but also personified by the creators and auteurs that compose the industry itself.
I'm Rick Dalton. It's my pleasure, Mr. Schwartz.
An expansive cinematic subgenre has long persisted across all languages and international boundaries, that of film on film. Films that fall under this banner are not necessarily confined to stories about or around the production of movies. They simply must serve to either interpret or reflect upon the nature of filmmaking or the culture of the medium as a whole.
Face it, Dad, you're doing this because you're scared to death, like the rest of us, that you don't matter. And you know what? You're right.
This categorization is altogether largely amorphous, spotlighting a wide variety of the million little pieces and professions that compose the larger art of filmmaking, be it the director's chair, the producer's studio, or the actor's dressing room.
With the head still on.
Well, Barton, you might say I sell peace of mind.
With such a long and lauded history, it can be hard to fully quantify the scope of the genre or begin an approach to its vast filmography. Featuring several Best Picture champions, Palme d'Or winners, and generally iconic films of all time, it can be hard to figure out where best to start. The list that follows serves as a rough approximation of some of the foremost formative members of the century-spanning pictorial pantheon of film on film.
The way you helped me, or give me that chance, darling, please. Please don't shut me out, please.
Number 10, Barton Fink, Joel Cohen, 1991. Few names have rung louder throughout Hollywood over the last 40 years than those of Joel and Ethan Cohen. Following a nearly flawless debut with 1984's Blood Simple, the brothers went on to create some of the most culturally determinative and resoundingly timeless classics of the era.
Let's get out of here.
From the snow-capped Dakotan noir of Fargo, 1996, to the quintessential stoner comedy of The Big Lebowski, 1998, or Best Picture-winning Texan crime thriller No Country for Old Men, 2006, the duo have never strayed too far from the front lines of American cinema. An often forgotten, yet remarkably memorable hidden gem among their filmography is that of their 1991 nightmaric descent into 1940s Hollywood and the inescapability of writer's block, Barton Fink.
For the first time in the history of the Cannes Film Festival, one film has swept all the major awards. Barton Fink.
Born from the arrival at a creative impasse in the writing process of the Coens' prior film, Miller Crossing, 1990, Barton Fink is a lasting contemplation on the creative process and the often unquenchable desire to spontaneously create art out of detritus.
Right now, the contents of your head are the property of Capitol Pictures.
The film stars the breakout performer of the aforementioned Miller's Crossing, John Turturro, as the eponymous Barton Fink, a rising Broadway playwright tentatively lured to Hollywood by the conventional promise of fame and fortune. Assigned to script schlocky wrestling picture and set up in the ghostly Hotel Earl next to an overly friendly neighbor, John Goodman's mysteriously inquisitive insurance salesman, Charlie Meadows, Fink finds little success.
How you been, buddy? Well, don't look at me like that.
Plagued by the ever-approaching deadline, and slowly becoming aware that things around him may not be exactly as they seem, what follows is a story rich with striking visual symbolism and an eternally relevant remonstrance on the relationship between reality and the motion pictures. Few films dare to examine the industry with as unabashedly ominous a perspective as Barton Fink, but this grave confidence is what in turn lifts it above so many other cinematic entries of its time. Number 9, The Bad and the Beautiful, Vincent Minnelli, 1952. Largely overshadowed by another 1950s film-on-film classic that will come up later on this list, Vincent Minnelli's window into the cutthroat world of Hollywood producer Jonathan Shields and the carnage that lies in his wake, The Bad and the Beautiful, is a fascinating recontextualization of the Hollywood studio system and the eventual corruption of even the strongest-willed idealists. The film plays around with the prototypical 3-act structure, limitations of the era, telling 3 sprawling stories through flashback to bring the audience up to speed with the characters and their muddied histories together. Ostensibly the story of the legendary Kirk Douglas as movie producer Jonathan Shields, the narrative follows the beginning and ends of the 3 central relationships in his life from the point of view of the people that Shields wronged to get to the top.
No, I don't know. No, I don't know where. No, I don't know.
What follows is a tragic and honest analysis of the important yet often ill-defined role of producer in movie making, and the industry's tendency to make one choose between greatness and goodness. While Shields is arguably the center of the film, the audience only sees fragmented pieces of him throughout each of the 3 stories, only completed once the movie winds to a close.
Can't look off your face! Who gave you the right to dig into me and turn me inside out and decide what I'm like? How do you know how I feel about you, how deep it goes?
The film begins with the story of Shields' early days through the lens of his former best friend and film director Fred Emile, played by Barry Sullivan. It then shifts to his roarous marriage to actress Georgia Lorison, played by career best Lana Turner. The final segment spotlights prized novelist Dick Powell's James Lee Barlow that Shields deliberately entangles in the web of Hollywood and to ultimately calamitous effect.
Hurry! Now, sir!
Each of these stories, told in the present by the victims gathered together by a now desolate Shields, highlights a different side of the film industry during the 1950s and ultimately allows for an intricately detailed and expansively original perspective on Hollywood. Number 8, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Quentin Tarantino, 2019.
Look at me!
So you still direct, huh? Still here.
You can do anything you want to him.
The most recent entry on this list, and the 9th feature film from writer-director Quentin Tarantino, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, portrays a vastly different Tinseltown on the precipice of a new era of cinematic expression in 1969. A childhood memory piece, infused with a long-standing cultural fascination with the period, Tarantino set to reconstruct the city and its colorful inhabitants to the most minute detail.
How'd your little talk with George go? Are we kidnapping him?
Not the word I'd use.
Dubbed Tarantino's most sensitive film upon its release, the audience is taken on a purposefully meandering journey through the lives of Leonardo DiCaprio's fading movie star Rick Dalton and Brad Pitt's Oscar-winning performance as Rick's stoic stunt double, Cliff Booth. The film takes its time before injecting any concrete narrative into the characters' lives, more or less letting the audience simply live and breathe in the spellbinding Los Angeles landscape for a few precious moments. A sense of impending doom soon seeps through the dreamy facade of the city in the form of the malicious Manson family and the arrival of Rick's newest neighbor, Margot Robbie as Sharon Tate.
Oh, hey.
Hello.
How can I help you, young lady?
With 50 years separating the Hollywood the film is set in and the one that it was released into, a structural comparison between the two eras is quickly formed. By assembling such a robust cast of living legends like Al Pacino, Bruce Dern, and Kurt Russell, along with up-and-comers like Maya Hawke, Margaret Qualley, and Austin Butler, Tarantino was able to construct such a rich portrait of the golden age of movie stardom.
And I'm here to do the devil's business.
No, it was dumber than that. Something like Rex.
Both a rumination on the dream of Hollywood as a town where one's luck can change in a night, and a solemn reminder that that notion, and the industry itself, are often little more than a fairy tale, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood rises above its competition through sheer scope and unflinching austerity. Number 7, Man with a Movie Camera, Dziga Vertov, 1929. Moving from 2019 to 1929, Dziga Vertov's radically formative Man with a Movie Camera is an endlessly fascinating and permanently bewitching look at the earliest days of film. An unabashedly avant-garde construction, the film is completely silent and without intertext subtitles. The only words that appear on the screen come at the very beginning through the exclamation that the film represents an experimentation in the cinematic communication of visual phenomena, directed towards the creation of an authentically international, absolute language of cinema. This notion rings through at every frame of the film, and serves as a primary linkage between the scattered visuals, featuring incredibly impressive visual effects, like size distortion, reversed footage, stop-motion animation, cross-cutting, double exposure, and all-around lightning-fast editing style unseen at the time. The film's wholeheartedly original. As the title suggests, the film is just a man wandering around the streets of a Soviet city, such as Moscow, Kiev, and Odessa, with a camera attached to his shoulder and an eye for dynamic visuals. The cameraman documents in a mystical detail the lives of the Soviet citizens both at work and at play, leaping between cavernous shots of the industrial city and close-knit shots of the city dwellers relaxing at the beach or at the movies. At one point, man with a movie camera even goes so far as to cut to an actual audience screening of a previous cut of the same film, further accentuating the uniquely self-reflexive visual style and coherently a perception on the power inherent in the lens of every movie camera. Number 6. The Player. Robert Altman, 1992. Comprising possibly the largest assembly of celebrity cameos of all time, 65 to be exact. Legendary director Robert Altman's late-in-life masterpiece, The Player, exists as a fitting culmination of his entire career in Hollywood.
Up all the postcards. I don't write postcards! I write postcards!
The creator of American New Wave classics like MASH, 1970, The Long Goodbye, 1973, and Nashville, 1975. Altman has weathered many decades as a prominent figure in film. This immense experience informed many of the greater nuances, or lack thereof, within The Player and its colossal cast of eccentric characters.
Make yourself at home. Mr. Mill, I understand you're kind of late coming in this morning. You all right?
A simple premise made exceedingly complex, the film follows Tim Robbins as Griffin Mill, a Hollywood studio executive tasked with assessing the potential of pitched screenplays, who has been tormented by a series of postcard death threats assumed to be from a neglected writer. Mill, completely consumed by a desire to rise to the top and overcome his cutthroat competition, begins a labyrinthian tale of murder, madness, and the history of movies that any audience member will soon not forget.
Not unlike Ghost meets Manchurian Candidate.
The film is routinely merciless in its witticism on 1990s Hollywood, weaponizing its satire as a means with which to best capture some of the most absurd truths of the industry, and only growing with more relevant with age. Robbins commands the screen throughout, but is helped along by a tender performance from Greta Sacchi, small, memorable appearance by Vincent D'Onofrio, and characteristically scene-stealing turn from the underappreciated Richard E. Grant.
But this particular writer that you met was murdered last night in back of the Rialto Theater in Pasadena. Murdered?
While Altman never shows up on screen, it isn't hard to surmount that his voice and vision lie at the center of The Player, offering a unique perspective on the business side of the movie making of one of the industry's greatest creators. Number 5. Birdman, or the Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance. Alejandro González Iñárritu, 2014. Winner of 4 Oscars at the 2015 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Original Screenplay, Alejandro González Iñárritu's exceptional Birdman remains one of the foremost cinematic achievements of the last decade, and a hallowed member of the film-on-film pantheon.
And the Oscar goes to Birdman.
Famously edited to appear as one continuous uninterrupted take, the film has beat for beat breathtaking cinematography from Emmanuel Lubezki and consistently astonishing camera work, a near technical miracle on all fronts. But what truly lifts the film above others is the relentlessly raw performances and endlessly complex screenplay. Michael Keaton stars as Regan Thompson, a washed-up Hollywood actor famous for portraying the popular superhero Birdman in the 1980s, and attempting to launch a comeback in a new Broadway play. The story, unmistakably similar to Keaton's own history playing Batman in Tim Burton's film series, and subsequent career path surrounds the days leading up to the premiere and the personal and professional strife that Regan finds himself drowning within. Featuring Emma Stone in her first Oscar-nominated role as Regan's detached daughter, commanding performances from Edward Norton and Naomi Watts as Regan's fellow stage actors, and a surprisingly apt turn from comedy star Zach Galifianakis. Supporting cast all shine.
Hate to see it, but long after you're gone, I'm gonna be on that stage, earning my living, bearing my soul, wrestling with complex human emotions.
But the movie rests solely on the shoulders of Michael Keaton, and luckily, the actor turns in his best work of his entire career. Keaton portrays Regan as a man of many faces, his facade of sanity slowly slipping as opening night approaches and the phantom spirit of Birdman appears to the actor more and more. The result is a startling reflection of the effects at stardom and the inevitable waning of fame wreak on one's psyche and the rabid lengths some will go to get it back.
Music. You okay, man?
The film reaches beyond the singular story of Regan Thompson, or the dangers of celebrity though, adding a complex reflection of the evolving definition of entertainment and the decay of prestige in lieu of popularity. The film memorably riffs on the idea that mass audiences are not interested in the so-called talky and philosophical content that reigned supreme in the past, and asserts that blood and action is what audiences tune in to see now.
Hey, welcome aboard, Mike.
Thank you, Captain. I'm Mike Shiner, by the way.
Oh, I know who you are.
While not a complete denigration of the blockbuster industrial complex, comprises the bulk of modern Hollywood, the film does offer a meaningful and altogether uncommon questioning of the presence and province of titular art in modern cinema.
Fugitives are scared, fugitives are on the run.
Yeah.
So, how many times do we have to get? Could you just give me a little more of that? Fears. Yes, great.
Number 4, 8.5. Federico Fellini, 1963. Taking the film on film genre one step further, 8.5 constructs a sub-sub categorization called Fellini on Fellini. Acclaimed Italian director Federico Fellini had risen to international prominence for his distinctively Baroque surrealism and shadow-soaked fantasy in films such as Night of the Cabiria, 1957, and La Dolce Vita, 1960. The film follows mesmerizing Marcello Mastroianni as a Fellini-inspired Italian film director named Guido Anselmi, struggling creatively and emotionally to prepare for his next film. The somewhat bizarre title comes from the incredibly metatextual fact that Fellini had produced 7 feature films and 2 episodes in composite films that the director surmised added up to about a half of a film, up to that point in his career, which made this picture Fellini's 8.5 film.
Guido, e bravo Guido, che stai preparando qualcosa di bello?
Fellini puts on trial both his directorial style and career, personal failings, and deepest childhood inspirations in an utterly mystifying combination of ravished black and white photography and unrestrained candor. While never approaching parody, 8.5 allows for Fellini to allow avid fans and general audiences alike into the complex world on the other side of the camera and examine the sacrifices required to direct a film. Steeped in crisp, dreamlike visuals chock full of resonant symbolism, the film creates a hypnotic trance, not broken until the very last scene, in which all of the story's larger emblems and motifs boil together to create one harmonic message about Fellini, film, and life itself.
Maestro!
Number 3. Sunset Boulevard, Billy Wilder, 1950. Arguably the most denominatively recognizable classic title in the film-on-film genre, the renowned director of Double Indemnity 1944 and The Apartment 1960, Billy Wilder's 1950 Sunset Boulevard, has long endured as integral Hollywood iconography, a timeless tale of mortality.
Mama, you're a woman of 50. Now grow up. There's nothing tragic about being 50. Not unless you try to be 25.
The film follows William Holden's struggling screenwriter Joe Gillis as he is steadily ensnared in the majestic tragedy of delusional former silent film idol Norma Desmond, played by Gloria Swanson in one of the greatest performances to ever grace the silver screen. Simultaneously capturing a hyper-specific moment in the history of film as the last remnants of the silent film era disappeared, as well as a larger perspective on the ordination of time and film, Sunset Boulevard has loomed large over the many decades in cinema that have followed.
Still wonderful, isn't it? And no dialogue. We didn't need dialogue. We had faces.
Arriving at the starlet's palatial estate Accidentally, Gillis is slowly possessed by a moonstruck Norma Desmond, slowly discovering the imagined world that she has designed around herself to keep her from abandoning hope entirely. Her devoted butler, Max von Mayerling, winkingly portrayed by former silent film director Erich von Stroheim, has assisted in her self-chicanery, writing out glowing letters from supposed fans and ensuring that any hint at her cultural insignificance not make its way into the capacious mansion. The film blends classic tenets of noir, dark satire, and film-on-film genres into an immense ode to the still evolving genesis of the movie industry. Few will be able to forget the instantly recognizable conclusion to the film, and the final lines that remain at the vanguard of cinematic discourse to this day. Number 2. Close Up, Abbas Kiarostami, 1990. An esoteric hybrid of documentary footage and recreated narrative storytelling, Iranian director Abbas Kiarostami's Close Up surrounds the remarkably true story of Hossein Sabzin and provides a foundationally humanistic perspective on the impact of film on everyday life. In part, a film record of Sabzin's trial and a loose reconstruction of the events that led up to it, the film is as much a continuous conversation with cinema itself as it is a linear story. Kiarostami was personally enamored by the sensational news story of a man on trial for the fraudulent impersonation of acclaimed film director Muhsan Makhmalbaf, and sought the man out in prison to hear the story before he faced his sentence. The director finds a man not intent on burglary or devious by any stretch. Instead, he discovers someone deeply engrossed in the world of cinema and longing for a life that would allow him to express his most fundamental passion. A different side of the film-on-film genre, Close Up allows for a window not into the mind of the creatives or auteurs on the inside of the industry, but rather the people that they inspire on the outside. Utilizing all of the actual real-life participants as actors and actresses in the fictionalized segments of the film, chord is met between unwavering realism and the more loose spiritual analysis of the events that inspire in real time. Few films speak with as much unalienable truth on human identity and the role of art in giving life meaning as Close Up, cementing its place as the penultimate film on this list and guaranteeing its relevancy will never diminish. Number 1. Cinema Paradiso, Giuseppe Tornatore, 1988.
Però numero 1, qua non ci deve venire più. Numero 2 te li tengo io, capisti? Va bene.
Rounding out this congenial ranking on film is Italian director Giuseppe Tornatore's eternally enchanting celebration of movies and their ability to last a lifetime, Cinema Paradiso. Winner of the Best Foreign Film at the 1989 Academy Awards, the film has grown to become synonymous with the medium itself as a perfect encapsulation of all that cinema can hope to inspire. The sequential story of imagined film director Salvatore Toto De Vite, told trinally across his childhood, adolescence, and adulthood. The film traces Toto's complicated relation to film through his kinship with the Cinema Paradiso movie theater in his hometown and the elder projectionist who runs it. Flashing between Toto's earliest memories of watching classic film in the theater, his youthful misadventures as both the theater's projectionist and lovesick in Marotto of alluring Elena, and his eventual return to the pelagic seaside town after decades away, the film constructs an acutely emotional and universally relatable story of youthful anguish and the immortal magic of the movies. Few films can balance sincere melancholia with inspirational vivacity as well as Cinema Paradiso. And after a brilliantly bittersweet ending sure to leave no tears unwept, a profound happy sad is sure to linger with the audience the next time they get to experience a movie in a theater. Honorable mentions: Adaptation, 2002, Singin' in the Rain, 1952, La La Land, 2016, Mulholland Drive, 2001, Scream, 1996, King Kong, 1933, Ed Wood, 1994, Contempt, 1963, Day for Night, 1973, The Purple Rose of Cairo, 1985, Sullivan's Travels, 1941, The Artist, 2011, This Is Not a Film, 2011, and Mank, 2020.
Off first.
Ready and willing to hunt the great white whale?